Roman-Germanic Wars, tough years. The Roman-Germanic Wars were a defining chapter in the history of the Roman Empire and the Germanic tribes, spanning over 2 centuries of intermittent conflict. These tough years tested the resilience, adaptability, and endurance of both civilizations. For Rome, the wars represented a struggle to expand and secure its northern frontier. For the Germanic tribes, they were a fight for freedom and survival against a powerful and invasive force. This narrative explores the grueling years of warfare, highlighting the challenges, sacrifices, and legacies of the Roman-Germanic Wars. Chapter 1. The Early Years, Rome Meets Germania. Rome's first encounters with Germania in the late 1st century BCE were driven by ambition. Julius Caesar's campaigns in Gaul brought the Roman legions into contact with the fierce and fragmented Germanic tribes across the Rhine. While Caesar conducted brief incursions, the true Roman ambition to conquer Germania began under Emperor Augustus. Challenges for Rome: unfamiliar terrain. The dense forests, swamps, and unpredictable rivers of Germania were unlike anything the Romans had encountered in the Mediterranean or Gaul. The terrain favored the Germanic tribes, who knew every path and hiding place. Fragmented opposition. Germania was not a unified state, but a collection of independent tribes. While this disunity could be exploited, it also meant that subduing one tribe often led to resistance from others. Chapter 2. The Disaster at Teutoburg Forest. In AD 9, Rome suffered one of its most devastating defeats. Publius Quinctilius Varus, confident in his ability to pacify Germania, led 3 legions deep into the territory. Lured into an ambush by Arminius, a chieftain of the Cherusci who had once served Rome as an auxiliary, the legions were annihilated in the dense Teutoburg forest. Tough years for Rome. Moral and military devastation. The loss of 3 legions, approximately 15,000 to 20,000 men, was a psychological blow. Emperor Augustus reportedly cried, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions." Strategic setback. Rome abandoned its plans for full conquest of Germania, retreating to the Rhine. The dream of a Roman Germania seemed unattainable. Chapter 3. The Campaigns of Germanicus. In the years following the Teutoburg disaster, Emperor Tiberius sought to restore Rome's honor. His adopted son, Germanicus, was tasked with leading retaliatory campaigns into Germania from AD 14 to AD 16. Germanicus' campaigns were grueling and brutal, marked by significant battles and massive destruction. The challenges for Germanicus: logistical nightmares. Supplying large armies deep in Germania was difficult, with supply lines vulnerable to ambush. Relentless resistance. The Germanic tribes, while lacking the cohesion of Rome, were fierce and unyielding in their defense of their homeland. Pyrrhic victories. Despite achieving tactical victories, including recovering the lost eagle standards of Varus's legions, Germanicus could not achieve a decisive conquest. Germanicus returned to Rome hailed as a hero, but his campaigns underscored the futility of Rome's efforts to subdue Germania. Tiberius decided to consolidate the empire's borders, focusing on defense rather than expansion. Chapter 4. The Frontier Wars. For decades after Germanicus' campaigns, the Rhine frontier became a volatile zone. Roman legions manned a network of forts and outposts, constantly skirmishing with Germanic raiders. The tribes, though divided, launched frequent raids into Roman territory, testing the legion's resolve. Tough years for both sides. Rome's burden. Maintaining the Rhine frontier was a costly endeavor, requiring constant troop deployments and resources. The empire faced financial strain as it defended its vast borders. Germanic struggles. The tribes lived in near-constant conflict, not only with Rome but also among themselves. Unity under leaders like Arminius was rare and short-lived. Chapter 5. The Marcomannic Wars. The 2nd century saw a new phase of conflict during the Marcomannic Wars, AD 166 to 180. These wars erupted as Germanic tribes, pushed by pressure from migrating peoples like the Huns, launched massive incursions into Roman territory. The Roman struggle. Multiple fronts. Rome was already dealing with invasions along the Danube frontier and a devastating plague that weakened its population and legions. Devastation in Italy. Some Germanic tribes penetrated deep into Roman territory, even threatening Italy itself. Emperor Marcus Aurelius personally led campaigns to repel them, writing parts of his meditations during the conflict. The Germanic struggle, displacement and survival. The migration of other tribes and pressures from Rome forced the Germanic tribes into a cycle of war and movement, disrupting their way of life. The Marcomannic Wars ended in a fragile peace, with Rome maintaining its borders but at great cost. The wars marked the beginning of the slow erosion of Rome's dominance in the region. Chapter 6. The Collapse of the Western Roman Empire. By the 4th and 5th centuries, the balance of power along the Roman-Germanic frontier had shifted. The once formidable Roman Empire faced internal decay, economic troubles, and pressure from external forces, including the Germanic tribes. The final years of struggle. The crossing of the Rhine, AD 406, a coalition of Germanic tribes, including the Vandals, Suebi, and Alans, crossed the frozen Rhine and poured into Roman Gaul. This marked the beginning of the end for Roman control in the West. The sack of Rome, AD 410, the Visigoths, led by Alaric, sacked Rome, a symbolic moment that shook the ancient world. Germanic tribes continued to carve out territories within the crumbling empire, eventually establishing kingdoms that would shape medieval Europe. Chapter 7. Tough Lessons and Legacies. The Roman-Germanic Wars were not just a series of battles but a centuries-long struggle that shaped the destiny of Europe. Both Rome and the Germanic tribes emerged from these tough years profoundly changed. For Rome, limits of empire. The wars highlighted the limits of Roman power and the futility of overextending into hostile territories. Germania became a natural boundary, with the Rhine and Danube marking the edge of Roman influence. Military adaptation. The Roman legions adapted to the challenges of frontier warfare, relying more on fortified defenses and auxiliary troops. For the Germanic tribes, unity through conflict. The constant pressure from Rome fostered a sense of identity and unity among some tribes, laying the groundwork for the kingdoms that would emerge after Rome's fall. Legacy of resistance. The tribes' ability to resist Rome became a defining narrative of their history, celebrated in later centuries as a symbol of freedom and defiance. Conclusion. The tough years remembered. The Roman-Germanic Wars were a crucible of resilience and ingenuity. For centuries, they defined the relationship between the Roman Empire and the peoples of Northern Europe, shaping the cultural and political landscape of the continent. These tough years left a legacy of conflict and cooperation, conquest and resistance, that continues to echo in the history of Europe. The wars were not just a test of arms but a testament to the enduring struggle between civilizations. Chapter 8. The Human Cost of the Wars. The Roman-Germanic Wars exacted a tremendous toll on both the Roman Empire and the Germanic tribes. Behind every battle, ambush, and raid were countless lives uprooted, communities destroyed, and generations shaped by war. The Roman perspective. For Roman soldiers, the frontier was both a place of honor and hardship. They endured grueling campaigns, long marches through hostile terrain, often under harsh weather conditions. Isolation. Life on the frontier meant years away from families, stationed in forts where contact with Roman society was limited. Psychological toll. Survivors of disasters like the Teutoburg Forest were haunted by memories of comrades lost in brutal ambushes. Families in the empire also suffered. News of a son or husband stationed in Germania often brought anxiety, as stories of defeats and massacres filtered back to Rome. The Germanic perspective. For the Germanic tribes, the wars were a fight for survival, but the price was steep. Villages destroyed. Roman retaliatory campaigns often involved the systematic destruction of villages, with survivors taken as slaves. Constant displacement. Raids, counterattacks, and Roman incursions forced tribes to relocate frequently, disrupting their way of life. Internal strife. Tribal alliances forged during times of war often broke down afterward, leading to infighting and power struggles. Both sides bore the scars of a conflict that seemed endless, with each generation inheriting the burdens of the last. Chapter 9. The Cultural Exchange of War. Though the Roman-Germanic Wars were marked by conflict, they also facilitated cultural exchange. as contact between the two sides grew over centuries. Roman influence on the Germanic tribes. The Germanic tribes absorbed aspects of Roman culture, technology, and military organization. Weapons and armor. Germanic warriors adopted Roman-style swords, helmets, and chainmail, often acquired through trade, plunder, or as auxiliaries in Roman service. Infrastructure. Exposure to Roman engineering inspired some tribes to construct more permanent settlements and fortifications. Political structures. The idea of centralized leadership, seen in figures like Arminius, may have been influenced by interactions with Rome. Germanic influence on Rome. Rome, too, was influenced by its Germanic neighbors. Military recruitment. Many Germanic men served as auxiliaries in the Roman army, introducing their fighting styles and tactics. Language and names. Germanic words and personal names began to appear within the empire, especially in frontier regions. Cultural ideas. The Roman view of the barbarian shifted over time, with some Germanic traits, such as valor and loyalty, admired and incorporated into Roman culture. Chapter 10. Turning points and missed opportunities. The Roman-Germanic wars were marked by pivotal moments that could have altered the course of history. Some of these turning points include 1. Teutoburg Forest, AD 9. The ambush orchestrated by Arminius not only halted Roman expansion into Germania, but also revealed the empire's vulnerability. Had Varus been more cautious or aware of the threat, the Roman Empire might have extended deeper into Central Europe. 2. Germanicus campaigns, AD 14 to 16. Germanicus campaigns inflicted severe losses on the Germanic tribes, but they fell short of achieving a decisive victory. Had Emperor Tiberius allowed Germanicus to continue, Rome might have regained the momentum lost after Teutoburg. 3. The crossing of the Rhine, AD 406.